Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm Angela Wilkinson, attraction coach and founder of The Goddess Next Door. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. Roberta Grimes is a business attorney, novelist, and speaker based in Austin, Texas, who had two extraordinary experiences of light as a child. In an attempt to understand her experiences, she has spent decades studying nearly 200 years of abundant and consistent communications from the dead and other afterlife-related evidence that eventually enabled her to assemble an in-depth understanding of who and what we are, how reality works, the nature of God, and the meaning and purpose of our lives. Roberta has learned so much about the death process and the period immediately following death that in 2010 she published a brief summary of the best information called The Fun of Dying. Find out what really happens next. Her second book about the afterlife, The Fun of Staying in Touch, will document the many ways in which the dead contact us and the wonderful recent research that is making it easier for us to contact them. But before I talk with Roberta, I want to announce Spark Society is now open to new members. Spark Society is the place to be to get access to all of my best stuff, my programs, meditations, and ebooks, and I give you my secrets for living your dream life. Let me teach you the best of what I know, help you implement everything you learn, give you the support you need, and help you stop waiting for what you want. I'll help you take charge of your life today. When you become a member, here's what you'll get. First, I'll share the exact steps in juicy detail how I met my soulmate in 30 days and created a mind-blowing relationship with the Love Spark program. That program starts March 1st. Plus, you'll get bonuses from me that you can only get as a Spark Society member. That includes my chakra clearing and grounding meditation, my Meet Your Mate meditation, and daily love mantras. Second, as a Spark Society member, you get exclusive gifts from the Awakened Goddess Show guests that you can't get anywhere else. Ebooks, mini courses, and meditations, all beautifully created products just for you. Plus, every single month, new gifts are being added. Plus, there are even more awesome things I can't even share yet. But I tell you, it might have to do with Awakened Goddess Show guests and live Q&A coaching calls, but you'll have to stay tuned for that. Register for your Spark Society membership over at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/love-spark, and get my Love Spark program today. Thanks for listening. Welcome, Roberta, to the Awakened Goddess Show. I'm really, really happy that you're here talking with me today about the fun of dying. So welcome.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me. We're going to have fun.
I know. You know, if that's not a controversial way to start a show, I don't know what is. So the fun of dying. Yeah, so that's the name of one of your books. And I know you have several books. You also have The Fun of Staying in Touch, which I've had the chance to check out. And let me just start off by saying my mom saw it and she read it. And she was like, oh my gosh, I got to get all of her books. So,
oh, bless her. Please
yes.
Tell her I sent her a hug.
I will. So cool. So let's just jump in right here. And first off, you are a practicing attorney. So Tell me, what ever happened that made you want to study death and the afterlife? I'm sure there's a story there.
Oh, there is. When I was 8 years old, I woke up in the middle of one night and realized there was no God, and I was terrified. And in the midst of my terror, there was a bright light in my room, like burning magnesium, a flash of light. And I remember the awful wallpaper and where the dolls were to this day, 60 years later, because that was a permanent mark on my mind. And a young male voice said, "You wouldn't know what it is to have me if you didn't know what it is to be without me. I will never leave you again."
Wow.
And I was relieved. I figured, oh, okay. If you forget, they remind you. And I turned over and went back to sleep. Because when you're 8, everything surprises you, so nothing surprises you. And I assumed that was normal because it happened to me, so it had to have been normal.
That's right.
But I never told anyone what had happened, so I never asked a question. I never got an answer. I even majored in religion in college, thinking by then they'll tell you what all that is. But I never asked a question, never got an answer. So finally, one day when I was 20, I was feeling pretty discouraged. I mean, I majored in religion in college. What do you do with that? So I came home one day from my summer job, sat down on my bed, feeling very glum. And over my right shoulder came the same white light, splashing in the room, and the same voice said, "I will never leave you." So that was what got me started on this voyage of trying to understand what really is going on. I didn't know where that had come from, but I figured wherever it had come from was probably where the dead go. There's probably a place somewhere that all of that is happening. And so I started to do research, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, well, I suppose when you have such experiences that you can really, I mean, that was very impactful. And something like that.
It was.
Yeah, something like that really captures your attention and will not let you go, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, whenever you have an experience like that, it's like a near-death experience or a visitation dream. They're on like a separate track in your mind, and they stay as if they had just happened. I recall that experience 60 years ago when I was 8, as if it had just happened last night. It stays forever with you. And because it does, and it's always fresh, you can't forget it. You don't want to, but you certainly couldn't even if you did want to. So, yeah, it drives you.
So I'm curious. So what, and I'm sure that this was part of your research and all of that. How did you realize it was maybe a spirit or someone from the afterlife versus maybe an angel or another entity?
I still don't know who it was. I believe it was my spirit guide.
Okay.
I think that we, as you know, we plan our lives in detail, and I planned obviously to do the work I'm doing now, but I knew that given the life I had planned, I would forget all about it. I needed to be reminded. So I'm sure before I got shrunk into a little body, I said to my guide, if you don't remind me, if you don't do something that's going to make me know what I'm supposed to do, I will not even do it at all. So that's why I had that happen to me. It's an experience which I didn't talk about it till I was 45, and my mother had a similar experience. And that was the first time I realized other people have experiences of light. So then I started to talk about my experience of light with others, and I discovered my guess is like 1%. Very few people have had that experience, but it's in the Bible. Moses with his burning bush that's not consumed. Saul on the road to Tarsus, where Jesus speaks to him out of a bright light. These are they're basically exactly the same experiences that I had. And everyone I've ever met who has had an experience like this had it in the depth of a spiritual crisis, not a financial crisis, not a love crisis, but a crisis of the spirit.
Sure.
And it seems to be what happens if you are distraught enough spiritually.
Okay. So as an attorney, I know that, the logical side of things is really important.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So I imagine for you, it was really important to find some real evidence. So I'm curious, what did you find from all of your research?
Well, it took me a while to find anything. It wasn't really until the wonderful Raymond Moody's Extraordinary Life After Life coined the term near-death experience that the study of death began to be a thing in the popular culture. And so in the late 70s and into the 80s, there were quite a few books written which had interesting bibliographies. And I would read the bibliography and get all the books on the bibliography, and then I would read all those books, and they would have bibliographies. And so I discovered that there is a core of information that was brought over in the first part of the 20th century. Most people are not aware of it. But there was a real effort being made by the dead at that point. Dead researchers were trying to come up with a way to convince living scientists that they had survived. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really core time for communication. We got communication then as we hadn't gotten it before, and we really haven't gotten it since. And a lot of these communications were studied by researchers who were like me, not necessarily scientists, but they were very serious researchers mm-hmm. who were just trying to sort of be on the cutting edge of what's going on. And they wrote books, and those books are available in used book bins, and if you know it, some of them have been reprinted. If you find one, you start to find them all. Mm-hmm. And they're wonderful, wonderful. I probably read several hundred communications that were received through deep trance mediums, automatic writing, and channeling in the first 30 to 40 years of the 20th century. And they are a treasure trove of information because those communicators gave us details about where they are and what goes on mm-hmm. that really we don't get to the same kind and quality of information through through psychic mediums as we get through deep trance mediums. Mm-hmm. So I read all of these thinking I would find a few that corresponded. You know, if I could find a few that said something about the afterlife, I could assume that was probably true. That's where I started. What I discovered after reading hundreds of them was there was not a single one that was not consistent with all the others. Mm-hmm. There were no outliers. It was, I say in The Fun of Dying, it was like reading hundreds of accounts by a century's worth of travelers to Fiji that all had different experiences, but the physics was the same, the process was the same, the things they did it was all the same, the way they dressed, everything about it was the same. Yeah. And so that's how I knew it had to be real. There was no way that would be the case if it weren't real. Mm-hmm. And I think anyone who does this research will come to the same conclusion. So that was where it started for me. And it took me, given that I was practicing law, raising children, doing the things you do in your life at that time, it took me, 15, 20 years probably to feel that I had read as much as I could find of that stuff. Then my problems were two. My first problem was that what I was learning was so inconsistent with Christianity. And I had been a very zealous Christian because, for heaven's sake, God spoke to me when I was 8. Yeah. How could you not be a zealous Christian then? So I was having a crisis of faith. I'd been reading the Bible through over and over and over again. I probably read it 12 or 14 times, the whole Bible, and twice as many times the New Testament. I closed the Bible. I wouldn't read it anymore because I couldn't bear for Jesus to be wrong. Mm-hmm. The other problem I had, of course, was that the physics of the afterlife is so different from the physics here. And I don't know anything about physics. So I thought, oh my goodness, I'll never be able to make sense of this. So those were my two problems. And I solved them independently. I solved toward the end of the 90s. I finally started to say, I don't want to test Jesus. Do not test the Lord. However, it seems to me he said a lot of stuff that's very consistent with what I know to be true about the afterlife. And remember, I'm doing this research only for myself. Mm-hmm. I want to know where that light came from. It had never entered my head to ever write about it. But I wanted to know. I thought one day, I'll sit down and I'll just read the Gospels once, just because I need to know how much is consistent. What I discovered, and anyone who wants to do it can make the same discoveries. Jesus told us things about God, reality, death, and the afterlife in the Gospels that we could not have confirmed by any means until the early 20th century. Little things, big things, all kinds of things. And the only things in the Gospels that are not consistent really aren't consistent with the rest of the Gospels either. We know there was editing done. Yeah. And those are edits. You can find those edits. Thomas Jefferson, who's one of my great heroes, said that the words of Jesus stand out in the Gospels, in the Bible, like diamonds in a dunghill. And indeed, that's exactly right. Yeah. We have this glorious package of truth that was given to us 2,000 years ago, and by God's grace was preserved for us perfectly, or close to perfectly. So that was when that was probably the single greatest moment of my life when I spent an afternoon reading the Gospels again and discovered Jesus told us all this stuff, because then I could have Jesus back. I didn't see any conflict anymore. There's a conflict with Christianity, but Christianity is in conflict with the teachings of Jesus anyway. So I had to choose one. I chose Jesus, and I've never, ever been sorry about that. Mm-hmm. So that solved that problem. And the second problem, of course, was what the heck do you do with this physics that is consistent in the afterlife that doesn't make any sense? And fortunately, early part of this century, we started to get some very good physics for dummies books, especially quantum physics for dummies books. And what I discovered is that quantum physics is a variant of the physics that operates in the afterlife levels. In a lot of ways, it makes sense to those of us who have studied the afterlife, as probably it doesn't make sense to terrestrial physicists. So at that point, I had it all put together. Then came April of 2009, and I've had a perfect life. And I thought, it's time I did whatever God wants me to do. And I don't know what prompted this, but one day I started praying a particular gratitude affirmation. I started saying, thank you for giving me work to do, and thank you for showing me how to do it. I just would say that a couple times a day and go about my day. Within 2 months, I was writing The Fun of Dying. I didn't even know I was going to write a book, but I was doing a little course at my church, and I found a Unity church which was consistent with what I had come to believe was true. So I was comfortable there, and I was doing a course on all of this. And then I just kept writing after the course was over. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And eventually a psychic friend of mine called me out of the blue, and we chatted, and she said, you do know you've got 5 dead clergymen working with you, don't you? And I said,
yeah, you do know, right?
I don't know that. How could I know that? I'm not psychic. Well, she said, well, everybody is. But nonetheless, and she told me about my guides. And I didn't, for more than a year, I never told this story because I'm a dry researcher, right? And I'm not psychic. None of this is channeled. But I came to understand that every morning when I was going to write, there would be a list in my mind of 3, 4, 5 things to either research or change or whatever in the book. I didn't always agree with them. This is my book. Who do you think you are telling me what to do? And every time that I would not do something, it would be on the next list. I only knew that book was finished when there stopped being lists.
Wow.
So I have to thank them now, although it took me more than a year to admit that they did a lot of this work, because I would have been an idiot of myself if they hadn't helped me. And instead, that book, which just now is in its second printing, we updated the appendices. I've heard from so many people who are experts in this field that it's the one that should be in the hospices. They haven't found a mistake. I didn't have to change anything in the book when we redid it. So thank you again to my guides. I'm very grateful to keep me out of trouble.
Yes. Awesome. I love that. So let's talk more about the quantum physics of the afterlife. So, okay, you said there are the books about quantum physics for dummies now. So how about you break it down to us? What did you figure out about the afterlife and physics?
Well, what the dead tell us is that first, just very simply put, in the afterlife, we can travel from one end of the universe to the next in just by thinking. I want to be from A to B. Mm-hmm. That defies everything we know here, but it's consistent with there being no objective space and time. And in fact, it's consistent with what Einstein called spooky actions at a distance. If 2 particles are synchronized and then separated, they will influence one another instantly. It will. Mm-hmm. They basically violate some basic tenets of Newtonian physics. Mm-hmm. So that made sense. In the afterlife levels, of course, all communication is telepathic. That didn't surprise me as much. But what did surprise me is that everything there is mind created. Even the plants are mind created. Everything is created by mind. Now, quantum physicists discovered that, in fact, our minds create reality. They don't want to say that's what they discovered, but that's what they discovered. And Max Planck said it. He got the 1918 Nobel Prize for being the daddy of quantum physics. He's a big guy in the world of physics. He said, human consciousness is primary. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we postulate as existing, postulates consciousness. Well, that's big.
Yeah.
And indeed, that's consistent with what's in the afterlife, too. It made it make sense. Now, what the dead tell us is that there are at least 6 levels, primary levels of afterlife reality that exist in the same place that we are. Exactly in the same place.
Wow.
It's as if everything is a channel on your TV set. If you had a TV in the room wherever you are, whoever's listening, you would find you could turn it on and pick up a channel. And that's what you've done. In fact, your mind is that TV set. It's tuned to this level of reality. In fact, it's tuned to that body on this level of reality. And that's why you think you're in this body, which you're not. This is like Jake's blue body in Avatar. It's a way for you to explore this alien place while your mind remains safe in eternal mind. So what we learn then is that and this is something, by the way, that the dead have validated. They first said it, the first communication I found that ever talked about the energy levels this way was one which used radio. In the early part of the 20th century, someone who was trying to explain it to his relatives said, you're tuned, your radio's tuned to where you are now, mine's just tuned a little higher. But what happens when we die is that our mind just tunes to a slightly, if this is channel 1, which we think it is, we think it's the lowest vibratory level, then, right, if you tune to channel 3 or 4, you pick up a whole new solid reality in the same place. And it's just as solid. And in fact, the people who live there say that's reality. Where we are now is the place that's not real. It's that easy. It's that simple to die. So does that help? I mean, that's what the dead tell us. Nothing is solid. What we think is solid here, that's not solid either. That's as much energy based and entirely energy as is any level of reality. And what makes it seem solid to us is just our minds make it seem solid.
So I wonder, did they clue you in on how us as conscious ego beings can shift our vibration and shift into that parallel reality and hang out with them?
Well, yeah, there are a few things we can do. It's easy to lower your rate. It's very hard to increase it. Yeah. So dead loved ones can come down and be in the same place we are, and they often do that. I mean, when you think you feel like your mom's in the room with you, she actually is in the room with you. She's just not in a physical body. When we think, how can I put this easily? There are ways that we can access the higher levels of reality while we are still in bodies. People who travel out of body can do that, and some people travel out of body easily. Some people don't consciously do it, but we all do it every night. And we can then raise our vibratory rate much more easily since it's not hampered by the physical brain, and we can meet in those upper levels of reality with our guides, with our loved ones who died, with all of those people that we don't remember who we spent the night with. We don't recall it, and our physical brains have a lot of trouble processing what has just happened, and that's why we have weird dreams. That's what your physical brain is trying to figure out what it was you did, and it can't begin to do that.
Right.
Occasionally, though, we do have visitation dreams where we actually meet in the afterlife levels with our loved ones. Those dreams we remember always as if they were fresh. I want to and also near-death experiences happen in this higher level of reality. There also are cutting-edge ways that I talk about in the fun of staying in touch that we can access our loved ones in those alternate levels of reality and have real physical experiences with them. This is an exciting new field. Let me just finish by stressing that these things don't happen where the dead go. They happen at the same vibratory rate as these higher levels where the dead go. But people who are going to come back never actually go to the real afterlife levels. That's a one-way trip. People who have a near-death experience will be told, if you go any farther, you can never go back.
Sure.
That's what they mean. I'm sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to have you share with us some of those ways you just mentioned, those cutting-edge ways to connect.
If you go to, I don't remember the name of his website. R. Craig Hogan, who's an amazing researcher in this field, has been working with some therapists who've discovered ways that they can help us to raise our vibratory rate and make these connections. Rochelle Wright, who, I don't know her website, but you can find just Rochelle, and her last name is Wright. She's a researcher in I believe she's near Seattle, who is routinely helping people who are in deep grief to have these experiences. She'll meet with these people for a day. She'll go put them through these exercises, really brain exercises that allow them to get into that level of consciousness. And I've talked with people who've done this with her, and they say that their grief had been a 12 and now it's a 1. It's just amazing how it assuages grief to be able to hug someone you thought you never would see again. And so someone who has worked closely with her is R. Craig Hogan, who is one of my big heroes. And he has developed a way for anyone who wants to do it to do this on his own. It's not easy. It's an 8-step process. You have to really learn how to reprogram your brain to allow your mind to do this. But some of the people who have done his process and worked it through can get to the point where they say, it isn't just I'm meeting them there, but they'll be in the room with me and we'll be having a conversation, and they're solid and everything. So, okay, my mind now is officially blown, but I trust in his process. So if you just go look for R. Craig Hogan, and I think it's spiritualunderstanding.com. I'm not certain, but it's for free. It's on the internet. Anyone can do it.
Cool. Awesome.
Isn't it cool?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I would love to just hang out in the room with everybody and say, hey, help me with this little issue I'm working with.
Just to know that the love continues and actually grows stronger, to me, it makes it worth everything. It changes your whole perspective on every possible thing in your life to know that that's true.
Well, and it gets me thinking, those times when you walk into a room and you can feel the energy, and I can only imagine just how many people or, your pets or who's all there.
That's right. Yeah. Because our pets are also waiting for us. It's also possible to have experiences with them. It's just, love is by far the strongest force. And people just don't understand that that's true, but that is true. In fact, we raise our vibratory rates by learning to more perfectly love and more perfectly forgive. Oh, definitely. And that's how most of us seem to enter at level 3. Levels 3 through 5 are what we call the Summerland, which are just beautiful, earth solid, much more beautiful than anything we can imagine is true, including colors we've never seen before because they're beyond the visible light spectrum. But to get much above level 3, we've got to raise our spiritual vibration. And that's the reason we're here. We're here to learn to more perfectly love and more perfectly forgive, just as Jesus said. He's right about everything. And that's why a lot of the things happen in our lives that maybe aren't so pleasant, because those are opportunities to better love and better forgive.
Yes.
And so that's really, I think, the core of what we're trying to teach when we try to teach people spiritual growth. There are no shortcuts. I mean, even if you're with a guru or whatever you do, the core of it is everybody in your life deserves to be loved infinitely, no matter how unlovable they seem, no matter how awful it is. Whatever someone has done to you, that's an opportunity to forgive from the heart. Forgiveness is not accepting. It's not saying what you did was okay. You don't have to say to somebody, I forgive you. But forgiveness is for yourself. It's a gift you give yourself. You forgive it, and then you let it go. And that's something you can learn to do. And the more you do it, the better it feels.
Yeah. Well, just in that release, you're letting go of that heavier energy. So you're lightening yourself up.
That's right.
Yeah.
So true.
Okay. So I want to switch gears just a little bit. So tell us how death happens and how does it feel? Because you say it's fun, right?
Yes. Well, think about it. You've been imprisoned in a boat anchor. This dying body, however you got there, your body is useless and you're imprisoned in it. When you die, first you need to understand that pre-death, there are things that happen psychologically that are very positive. You lose your fear of death. You begin within 12 to 24 hours, usually, of your death to see people that you thought were dead. They usually appear in the upper corners of the room. And they look young and healthy and happy, and they're talking to you with their minds. And so you know you're going to be fine.
Yes.
The minute you see the first one, and sometimes there's only one, sometimes they have a party around your bed. But when you see the first one, you know you're going to be okay, and you relax into that future. In fact, usually people stop interacting with the living very much or at all when they start seeing their deathbed visitors.
Yes.
So then you're going to die. The energy bodies that are going to leave, if you think of your body as a set of Matryoshka dolls, Russian dolls, the inner bodies, energy bodies are going to leave. They have been leaving regularly and traveling in the universe at night and stuff, but now they're going to leave for good. So they roll up. People who have been living and conscious and sort of alert during this process say it feels like threads sort of breaking, little threads breaking in your hands and up your arms. They say it isn't frightening, doesn't hurt, but it's interesting. You really can feel your body separating. And then it gathers in your chest and it leaves either through the top of your head or through your chest. People who are at the deathbed, because that aspect of you that is leaving is still relatively close to the earth vibration, people at the deathbed can often see it as a sort of mildly glowing mist. And then it sort of seems to disappear. What happens is it's raised its vibratory rate, and it becomes a body. It turns back into a body, and it's attached by the silver cord still to the body on the bed, and keeping that body alive for a little bit longer. And you, who just have left, feel fantastic because you're out of that boat anchor. You're free, you're young, you're happy, you're healthy. Everything is terrific. Yeah. You can't get over how great you feel. Some of the dead have actually said it's physically pleasurable. It's like an orgasm. That's how fantastic it feels to be out of that body. But you're clueless about what's going on because your culture, of course, has not prepared you for this. No religion has prepared you. Science is clueless. So around your bed are those people who've come to take you where you're going. And it's very important to keep your attention focused on them. If you remember nothing else from what we've said today, please, everybody remember, do not pay attention to the people around the bed because the silver cord breaks. The body stops breathing and they become upset. Oh, find a pulse. He's dead. She's dying. Oh, this is terrible. And you want to comfort them. I'm fine. Here I am. Look at me. But you can't do that because they can't see you. And if you try to get their attention, you lower your vibratory rate and you can make yourself into an earthbound spirit. Because when you lower your rate again, you won't be able to perceive the people who have come for you. So the one important thing to remember is you can't help them no matter how upset they are, and they might be very upset. You can't help them until after you've completed your transition. So you do that. You go with your mom or your dog or the group of people, whoever's come for you. And as you leave that room, and remember, you're going to the same place. It's not as if you're going far, but you go through what most people describe as a mist or a fog, which then rapidly clears. And when it clears, you're in a whole new place, just as solid, beautiful, that's in the same place where you were when you died.
Wow.
How's that for neat?
Wow.
Talk about fun. Could anything be more fun than that? Especially since you weren't expecting any of it. You thought you were going to be dead, actually dead. And there's no such thing for your mind as death. It's not possible for your mind to die.
Right. Wow. That sounds amazing.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Everybody should know this. Think of how it would relieve people's pain if they knew that people they thought were dead had just had this wonderful experience. If you think that you're, getting older or you're ill or something and you think it's coming, wouldn't it be wonderful to know that that's what's going to happen? How easy and joyous it is?
Well, and to know that you're just shifting into another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. So that seems like something that would be really good to know. If you're older and you feel like, your time is kind of winding down, to take that fear away and know that you are just transitioning and letting go of the physical body that's just kind of here for you to experience what it's like to be human.
The fact that our culture, the religious aspects as well as the scientific aspects, our whole culture is oriented around everything being material and life ending at death. That fact is the single most tragic aspect, certainly of our culture, but I would say of world culture, because none of that is true. And it's important now to say, let's talk about what's actually true. Yeah. And the evidence is overwhelming, abundant, and consistent that what I'm telling you is true. Your mind is eternal. It never began. It never will end. And it is infinitely loved. We are loved more than we can possibly imagine because we're part of eternal mind, and eternal mind is nothing but love.
Yeah, and isn't it unfortunate that we kind of learn to disconnect from that?
Yes, it's terrible. It's certainly terrible. Oh, my Lord.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so I think a really important message from talking today is that love piece and focusing on how you can be more loving, how you can express love more, how you can allow in love more. You know?
Everything that happens in your life is either love or a call for love. Everything. So no matter what happens, no matter what the question, love is the answer. No matter what happens, respond to it with love. Yeah. And forgiveness is part of that. We can't love unless we first are forgiven. Once we die, one of the first things that happens is we go through a life review, and we understand immediately that the standards for living our life on earth were a whole lot higher than we ever dreamed. Yes, we were being asked to learn to love perfectly. Not okay, not just the people we like, perfectly, everybody, no matter what. And we are being asked to forgive completely. Not, I'll forgive you because I like you, or I'll forgive you because I'm having a good day. Just no matter what happens, no matter how horrible it is, forgiveness, complete, utter forgiveness, as if it never happened to begin with. Because in reality, it never did. This is all illusion. This isn't real. And we come to understand that as soon as we graduate to the other level, which is where really life goes on, we come to understand it was all a game anyway. It didn't matter. This is just is like a bad day in school. That's all it is.
Yeah, and we take it so seriously.
Yes! Which is really a joke. You're absolutely right. Yeah. But it's a tragic joke until we figure out that that's all it is, because we do take it seriously. We think it's important to get money. Money means nothing. One of the great things that we learn soon after we die, if we've lived a middling good life and gotten to at least level 3, you know the old saying, you can't take it with you?
Yeah.
You can. Anything you want, you can have. You just think it, and there it is. And I think, isn't that neat though? But I think the reason is just to help us understand material stuff doesn't matter at all. You want it? Sure, here it is, piled on your head, but who cares?
Yeah. Pack your bag and away you go.
No, it's a wonderful, it's not something that those of us who have done this work, we don't want to hurry it, because we understand how very important it is to do the work we came here to do. But we certainly don't fear it. We greet it as a happy event when it comes.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have a technique that you like for forgiveness? Is there anything that you find to be useful or?
That's a very good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question. That's probably the first time in a long time I've gotten into one. It's been so long since I learned how essential it is. I'm trying to remember how I started learning. I guess I would just take something that was bothering me and hold it in my mind, and then wrap it in forgiveness energy, really almost feeling as if I was doing that physically, and then release it. It's very important to release it out of your mind. You feel as if you're physically pushing it out of your mind. And then it's gone. You've wrapped it in forgiveness, and it's gone. And if it comes back in, you just wrap it in forgiveness, and it's gone again. But what I learned is if you do this, it's as if your mind is efficient. It's not going to bother you with things that you're not going to let bother you. So you stop needing to forgive in the same way. I mean, now when someone does something that is troublesome to me, I don't even let it bother me. The forgiveness happens automatically, instantly. It's already gone before I even knew it happened. And that's how I think we're supposed to forgive, that way. So that you never even give it mind space.
Nice.
You just love it. And I want everyone to know that does happen. If you once let forgiveness start to be a very important process in your life, you stop needing to do it after a while because it happens really almost beyond your conscious awareness.
Yes. Yeah, you just kind of relax right into that. Yeah.
You just know, you didn't even notice it. Yep. You know, the guy rammed you with his car, whatever happened. God forbid, sometimes people do horrible things to one another.
Yeah.
That's meant to be forgiven just as much as you'd forgive someone who, I don't know, stole a candy out of a candy dish. It's all the same.
Very good. Very good. So I always like to finish up with asking what practical tip people can start using right away that you would recommend, maybe to connect with their loved ones or kind of get a sense of this, how to kind of step into these other realities.
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to understand that you are an eternal being. You never began. You never will end. And understand that there is no earthly religion. Earthly religions are all of man. They're not of God. There's no religion that teaches you this stuff. In order to really learn it, you've got to do a little research. In the back of The Fun of Dying and The Fun of Staying in Touch, there are about 70 odd books in an annotated bibliography. I've read all those books. Great place to start. The books I've written are just summaries, and they're meant to point you in a deeper direction. But it doesn't, no one has to spend 60 years, as I have, figuring out what happened to them when they were 8 years old.
Instead, you have the cliff notes.
Instead, you know, you can, within even a few months' time of just reading and trying to understand, you can come to the place where I am. And that's what I recommend most of all, because once you understand what's going on, you'll find it's easy to connect with your loved ones. You no longer feel this desperate need for reassurance. You know they're okay.
Yeah.
My mother died 2.5 years ago. It's only now that I have a sense that she wants me to go to a medium. So I'm doing that so she and I can have a visit. But she gave me so many signs right after her death that it was like, I understand how relieved you are at 93 to be finally out of that old body. She was having a wonderful time right after her death, giving us signs. Yeah. But that's the kind of life you live once you understand these truths. It turns what was a tragedy, life sucks, then you die, which is how many people live, into the ultimate comedy. This is just a little afternoon in school, and we're going to soon go home to milk and cookies with the ultimate parent. Loved and nurtured like we cannot possibly imagine. And that's what I wish for everybody listening, that kind of certainty about the joy of the fact that your life is eternal and everything is good. Nothing but love really exists.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and I think like we've kind of touched on a few times, just allowing yourself to step into love as much as you can and be love, express love, and surround yourself with love. Yeah.
The more you do it, the easier it is.
Yeah.
And if anyone has questions or comments, robertagrimes.com is my website, and I answer every email.
Oh, beautiful.
And so if you have a question or a comment, or you just, wonder about something, just send me an email.
Nice.
If I don't answer in 24 hours, send flowers. I love helping people start on their journeys. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to watch people grow. So I'm happy to help with that.
Yes.
I also do podcasts. I have more than 200,000 iTunes podcast subscribers.
Wow.
My podcasts are called Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes.
Okay.
And you can get there from my website, robertagrimes.com, or go right to iTunes. Now I podcast on webtalkradio.net so that I can reach a broader group of people who maybe weren't looking for this kind of information and try to get it to them anyway. I'm trying to help the world find these wonderful truths.
Yes, excellent. Well, I'll definitely put links to each of those, your podcast and your website, and also your books in the show notes, so everybody has easy access to reach you and hopefully connect and send you that email, and hopefully they won't have to send flowers. I'm sure you will hear from my mother because she, like I said, she absolutely loved your book. So
that's wonderful. Tell her I would be so happy to hear from her. That's great.
Yeah. So thank you, Roberta, for being on the show. This was such a fabulous conversation.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and consider yourself hugged.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Awakened Goddess Show. Did you enjoy it as much as I did? Well, make sure to subscribe on iTunes and give us a 5-star rating and review. And until next time, goodbye everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Awakened Goddess. I hope you enjoyed today's show and took away something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at thegoddessnextdoor.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.